Alright everybody, so how we doing today? Alright, let's get right into it. So, U.S. lapdog Jeremy Hunt? Prepping British public for war with Iran, just in case, Trump asks. Oh my god, if you guys could just see this picture, this is so dweeby. My god. Anyway, Britain will stand by its ally and consider offering military support if the Trump administration decides to go to war with Iran, Jeremy Hunt has confirmed. Words from the Foreign Secretary that are unlikely to come as a shock. With the U.S. doing its level best to raise tensions with Iran, Hunt has revealed himself to be every bit, the pathetic poodle of Washington that Tony Blair and ex-Foreign Secretary Jack Straw were in 2003 before the invasion of Iraq. Pathetic poodle. So we're looking at the PPW, Pathetic Poodle of Washington. Yeah, it's a new acronym now, I just invented it, PPW. The question is Jeremy Hunt really a PPW? Just because he says that they're ready to stand by America? Well, yeah, I mean, that on the surface, that definitely seems indicative. And I would certainly be inclined to think so. But let's be critical of that idea, shall we? Campaigning for the Tory leadership in Scotland on Monday, Hunt pretended to be very concerned about the recent attacks on oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman, which he claimed were almost certainly the work of Iran. He offered no new evidence, of course, but then again he didn't need it. Instinct had already told him that the Trump administration's chief warmongers, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, were telling him the truth. Instinct. You cannot have an instinct that lets you know what the truth is. Roman philosophers who tried to follow in the Greek tradition came up with the idea of veritas, the idea that you can tell that the person you're speaking with is telling the truth and they're not lying to you by how they say it. Veritas is confirmed by the social sciences to be a real thing. However, veritas only proves that what the person is saying is something they believe is true and that they are not deliberately lying. But it could still be misinformation. And hell, some people can actually learn to fake veritas very convincingly. Spies do it. So, yeah, you cannot simply have an instinct about this sort of thing. That's bullshit. U.S. request for military support would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, Hunt said, adding that the British government wanted to de-escalate the situation with Iran. Readers might recall it was only last week that Hunt branded Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn pathetic and predictable, and accused him of incredibly dangerous, virulent anti-Americanism for the sin of calling for de-escalation. So, let the level of the Foreign Secretary's sincerity be calculated with that in mind. Oh, so they wanted de-escalation, that made him criminally anti-American. Yeah. Definitely looking at the possibility that that Jeremy Corbyn is absolutely an American lapdog. Hunt was right about one thing, though. Corbyn's reaction was indeed predictable when 1 million gathered for a massive anti-war rally at London's Hyde Park in February 2003. Corbyn was there making an impassioned and prophetic speech against the impending invasion of Iraq. Oh, I got the names mixed up. I meant to say Hunt. Hunt. Their first name is Jeremy. They're both Jeremys. I got my Jeremys mixed up. A war in which he said there would be no justice whatsoever, and which would set off a spiral of conflict, of hate, of misery, of desperation, that would only fuel more terrorism. 16 years later, with 1 million dead in Iraq, a disastrously destabilized Middle East, and jihadists running rampant across the region, the warmongering British elite are readying themselves to do it all over again. Only this time, geopolitical and military analysts are warning the results could be even more disastrous. Britain's instant slavish support for the U.S. flimsy narrative against Iran is even more pathetic when you consider that other, usually staunch U.S. allies are openly questioning Washington's claims. Germany and Japan have both cast doubt on the Trump administration's assessments, making room for Britain to confirm its role as the most reliable of U.S. lapdogs once again. There have been attempts in the past to whitewash Britain's role in the Iraq War, with some eager to claim Tony Blair was tricked or duped into the conflict by Washington, Yes, Colin Powell iconically waved a vial of anthrax around at the UN in 2003, warning of Saddam Hussein's non-existent WMDs. But Blair's government concocted its own set of fabrications. Blair was not tricked or duped. He was a willing architect who enthusiastically spun lies for Bush. Citation needed. Seriously. This article makes that claim, but I never heard any confirmation back in the day that that was true. But I'm definitely seeing how someone could see Jeremy Hunt as a tool for Washington, D.C. The 2016 Chilco report revealed that when then Foreign Secretary Jack Straw was advised that the evidence against Iraq would not convince the public of an imminent threat, publication of the government's intelligence report was postponed. Until juicier details could be dreamed up later, the Hunt inquiry revealed that Straw had been instrumental in hardening up the new infamous dodgy dossier, or that his private secretary referred to in a 2014 email as the killer paragraph. That dossier, overseen by Blair spin doctor Alastair Campbell, included the false claim that Iraq could launch a chemical weapon strike against Britain within 45 minutes, when the BBC revealed that the document had been sexed up to convince the public to support the war. Sexed up? That's really the term you guys used? Wow. I would have used inflated or exaggerated. Sexed up is kind of... Not sure if that really makes sense in this context. Blair's government set about ruining the life of top weapons inspector Dr. David Kelly, the man who revealed their deceit to the BBC. Kelly was later found dead, officially from suicide, though some still believe his death was suspicious. Well, you know, I would incline to think that it was indeed suspicious. In fact, you can easily make homicide look like suicide. It's easy enough if you do it right. It's been done before. But, yeah, here we go. Here are some tweets from Mr. Hunt saying, pathetic and predictable from Salisbury to the Middle East. Why can he never bring himself to back British allies, British intelligence, or British interests? Another one, Britain should act to ease tensions in the Gulf, not fuel a military escalation that begins with U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement without credible evidence about the tanker attacks, the government's blah blah blah. That one was Jeremy Corbyn, and the one earlier was Jeremy Hunt. If you ask me, Hunt's tweet there sounds to me like he's disguising personal U.S. allyship as British interest. He's disguising his lapdoggery. Lapdoggery. I think I just invented a word. Yay! Anyway, as the article continues, it's at these moments when the public should be questioning why the men who got it so wrong in Iraq are swanning around and capable of commanding respect, while those who got it right are labeled unpatriotic and dangerous. The warmongers with ample help from the media have been remarkably successful in preventing anti-war rhetoric from creeping into public discourse and becoming a mainstream view. Anti-war voices have been belittled and sidelined because their voices represent the gravest danger to the elite. To hell with Iranian civilians. Imagine how dangerous peace would be for the American and British weapons manufacturers. Oh yes, because war is big business. It greases up the engines of gun manufacturing. And by the way, I'm not anti-gun. I'm actually pro-gun as far as civilian ownership. But I am definitely anti-war. Anyway, prominent anti-war figures like Corbyn pose such a threat to the war profiteering of the ruling classes that Pompeo was even caught on tape promising that the U.S. would do its level best to prevent the Labour leader from becoming Prime Minister. Pompeo dressed up his promise to interfere in Britain's domestic politics in fake concerns over anti-Semitism. But anyone who's even half awake can see that Corbyn's decades of anti-war activism would be the real cause of sleepless nights in Washington if he became PM. For now, Trump has managed to convince the media that he doesn't want war with Iran. Though whether he is sincere or not is another question entirely. The president who promised to end pointless wars is quite clearly playing good cop to Bolton and Pompeo's bad cop, buttering up the media and prepping the propagandized public to believe he did all he could to avoid conflict if one eventually comes. Britain is playing along, sliding into its usual role as a supportive sidekick ready to eat up whatever dodgy evidence Washington produces, and no doubt preparing to concoct some of its own to go with it. Really? So you're saying that Trump is playing good cop? And that even though he said that he promised to end pointless wars, except go back to that speech, he didn't say that he was going to end pointless wars. He said there would be no new wars in the Middle East. He's actually been very cleverly avoiding war. Think about it. When Iran shot down that drone, he could have gone to war with that. He could have gone to war. He didn't. He just let it go, said, oh, it must have been some military general who made a mistake. So, some guy with an itchy trigger finger. So we'll forgive you for that. We'll just add some more sanctions to you. I don't think Trump actually wants war. I think he realizes that that we can't afford to go to war with anyone right now. But at the same time, he wants to continue to employ sanctions as a way of pressuring people into good behavior. In short, he's moralizing the Middle East, which is not as bad as war, but it's still plenty bad, and we shouldn't be doing that either. Albeit, baby steps, right? One step at a time. At least it's not a war. And no, Trump is not playing the good cop. He's not playing the good cop. If he were a neocon warmonger, he would have declared war already. He's clearly trying not to. Ignore the words and focus on what the actions result in. What does this result in? It results in more sanctions, but at the same time, it de-escalates. Why would he be de-escalating if he was on their side? Truly 100% on their side. He must have recruited Bolton and Pompeo for a reason. And I'm assuming that it's more of a domestic reason. Like, they must have some domestic policy that merits their presence in the White House. But otherwise, they're a nightmare in terms of foreign policy. Anyway, that's just my opinion and the opinion of many other internet journalists and personalities that I respect very greatly. I agree with that idea. Anyway,